Welcome to TINAH Talks, where time is not a healer, but we believe we all have the power to heal ourselves and take our mental well-being into our own hands. This podcast is a byproduct of TINAH, the mental well-being marketplace, and a community platform at timeisnotahealer.com, providing you with the best products for your self-healing journey. Hit subscribe and follow us on socials if you want more support on your mental well-being journey. We're your hosts, Sophie and Kelsey, and this episode is all about loneliness and how sometimes you can feel lonely even in a room full of people. But actually, loneliness is a pretty normal feeling and we don't have to feel alone. So we want to kind of have this conversation, destigmatize feeling lonely, because it can be a really normal part of life. I know that I have personally gone through experiences and periods of time where I have felt lonely, even if I am surrounded by multiple people. So we want to share our perspectives and viewpoints on the subject. So yeah, Cassie, I don't know if you want to kick off and talk a bit about your experience, if you've ever felt lonely in your life, or if you've ever had any periods of time that have felt more lonely than others.
Yeah, gosh. I mean, and something just to piggyback off of like your intro is just that, right? Loneliness is normal. And at times there's a difference between kind of general loneliness and then loneliness when it becomes kind of a chronic issue and that feeds into mental health issues, depression, anxiety, and all that stuff. And then there's solitude, right? Solitude is where you're alone, but you're not necessarily lonely. You might experience feelings of loneliness while you're having solitude, but that it's not a bad thing, right? So I guess for me, I mean, gosh, I have had some pretty intense moments of loneliness just because as a traveler, I guess I've had different pockets of it. I've had pockets of it when growing up where I felt quite lonely because there was a lot of things happening in my family at my home. And it's like stuff like when you're younger, you don't know how to talk about, like, how do you talk about trauma and things like that? And so you feel quite alone. And that was pretty hard. Because like, people don't really understand and the peers around you, they're young themselves. So like, how could they really mentally grasp that? And that was definitely at times really hard. I would say in my later years of life, right? I originally worked in the psych field and had a stable like job and housing, and I lived in Wisconsin and the whole thing. And I quit and I picked up and I moved across the world to Australia. I didn't know anybody, and it was a matter of like figuring it out. And then I spent 6 years doing that same kind of thing over and over again. I went from Australia to Southeast Asia to multiple different places in Southeast Asia. And then to eventually, I mean, I spent some time in different places in Europe and back to Southeast Asia. And then my last bit was in Colombia. If I'm being honest, the loneliest I've ever felt is here moving back to the US. I'm about to be 33. I'm very lucky that I have a really solid partner, my boyfriend, and then one of my best friends from my time in Vietnam. She's also American, but she's come to stay with us. And without her, I think I would be incredibly lonely. Like, it's just hard to meet friends, to meet other people that you can build a community with. I find people in the US, especially like the non-travelers, they're pretty closed off. They've got their core unit of friends, people that they've like already established stuff with, and that's that. And in the traveling community, I mean, of course, I had moments of like, I had active solitude that I was seeking, trying to learn how to spend time with myself. And that was great. Moments of loneliness during that, but that was understandable. And I had anytime I moved to a new country, it was scary and there was like feelings of loneliness, but I found very quickly in those communities, people wanted to make connections. They wanted to be connected. So I was able to find people very, very quickly. I'd say so far in my adult life, it's been back in the US and like I'm in Chicago now, and it's been hard to meet people and make friends as like an adult. Making friends as an adult is hard.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's difficult, especially if you are living a quote unquote normal lifestyle,
Yeah.
um, where you are in one place all the time, you are in a routine, you already have like a group of friends around you, for example. I do think that is often where you generally will feel more lonely, because you're not meeting people consistently. There's no real like door openings to meet people. You have to go out and find it if you meet people. Like for me, I remember like really feeling lonely at school, and I think I've spoken a little bit about my school experiences before. And even though I had loads of friends and I was surrounded by people, like I just never felt like I fit in with these people that much.
Yeah.
And like, on an outside perspective, you wouldn't have necessarily known that. Like they probably had no idea that I was feeling that way. But I just didn't feel like, I just knew that they weren't really like the type of people I should be hanging around with. And the people that I did feel the connections with, maybe I palmed them off a little bit in favor of like going with like people that I thought I should be friends with, rather than the ones I genuinely felt like the connection with. And I think that like went into my adult life, and I became very, very sociable in my 20s. And I would like, I think I was quite a shy kid actually, and like I think that was because I was surrounded by the right people that I was shy, not because I was actually shy, but because I just didn't know how to communicate with people, that because they didn't feel like they resonated with me as much. But as I went into my 20s, I almost went the opposite direction. I went very, very sociable, made a lot of friends, a lot of different friends from all different places, and mainly through work, because I was in a job where it was like, I always worked in fashion, right? And in fashion, it's lots of girls. So in that scenario, like I had a lot of friends from work, and like I still have those friends from work, but also you're bonded by something that you've got in common, which is your job, and the career path you're on. So like I made a lot of friends. Also, I was a party girl, so I'd go out, I'd meet a lot of people in parties, on holiday, going out, whatever. And then I started my travel life, and that really opened up the possibilities of like meeting loads of people. But even though I had all of these friends all over the world and I was meeting lots and lots of people, in some cases I still felt really, really lonely. And I have come to realize later in life, probably over the past maybe 2 to 3 years, that you can be surrounded with people, you really can, and you will have people around you, you can have like great friendships, but unless they are the right people that you are surrounding yourself with, you're going to feel lonely, you're going to feel like you need more friends, or you don't have the right friendships. And I've only really realized that over the past couple of years. And I remember thinking, like, when I first moved to Bali, I made so many friends. Like I had hundreds of friends in Bali, like at the beginning. And someone once said to me once, they were like, why do you have so many friends? Like how, and I was like, I just meet people, I get chatting. And they're like, yeah, but why do you spread your energy that thin? Like, why are you trying to accommodate all of these people? Like, you clearly don't even really, like, not that I didn't care about them, but like, you clearly don't have anything in common with this person. Like, why are you friends with them? And I then started to think and was like, actually, you're right. Like, I don't really enjoy spending time with that person. I need to hang out with them because they've asked me to, like, or like because it's circumstantial. And then I started really being quite selective over the people that I was allowing myself to spend time with. And I realized how deep connections can go rather than just like surface level connections with a lot of people. And then I started to feel way less lonely. I started to feel less alone. I started to feel like I actually had people I could rely on and talk to about different things. And I think a lot of people don't realize that the reasons that they're feeling lonely, even though they're surrounded by people, is because they're just not your people.
Right. It's like the quality of the relationship. But it's funny because like you have to go through the first bit first, right? You have to put yourself out there. You have to meet a lot of people. You have to put in that time and energy to even see if they are your people. And then you have to decide, does this person resonate with me? Is this like a relationship worth going deeper with? And then you kind of have to trim the fat and then you go deeper with the quality relationships. And so it's hard to do. It's hard to do, especially if you're in a place of already feeling really lonely. And I think with loneliness comes a lot of insecurity. And then sometimes you go internal with it and it's about your self-esteem and your self-worth and things like that. But a lot of that resonates.
Yeah, I do think though that like what I've come to realize since being conscious of this is that I can now sense it like pretty much straight away. And like, for example, I met one of my best friends in Bali, Christy, and we literally met on a Facebook group, then started WhatsApping, and then as you do when you're in a travel community, that's a generalized way of making friends. Like you meet people on Facebook and WhatsApp. Sounds a bit old school probably to people that live like don't have used Facebook anymore, but that's just how it is. And then you would go meet up with that person, see if it clicks. And like I met Christy, and like immediately we clicked. Immediately we had so much in common. We got deep straight away. Whereas, as an example, I'm in a new location right now. I don't really have that many friends here. I've got a couple of friends that I made last year here, but I, for example, went out on a group dinner the other day, maybe like 8-9 people surrounded me, and I was chatting away, like seeing if there's anyone I connected with, and I was just like, no. Like, and at the end of it, like previously I might have been like inclined to be like, oh, you know, give me your Instagram, give me your WhatsApp, let's meet up again, just out of fear of like not having anybody. But I was like, no, like I don't feel any desire to see any of you again. Like, yeah, I had a nice night, don't get me wrong. If I see you on the street, we'll say hello, and maybe there's deeper connections to be formed if and when we're in the right circumstance, but I didn't feel any connection to you. So I'm learning now to decipher when it's worth taking those connections forward and like extenuating like some more energy on a relationship versus when it's not, because what I can't be bothered to do is waste my energy on people that I don't have any connection with anymore, because that's only going to make me feel more lonely, honestly.
Yeah, no, that's true. But I think for that, like I would say you're in an advanced stage of awareness, right? Like you've done a lot of work on yourself to really understand who you are, what you like, what you don't like, what you bring to the table, what you're willing to accept in your sphere, and like the boundaries, or like social boundaries, right? In the relationships that you want to have. And I know that if you're struggling with yourself, right? If you are in a place of feeling alone even when others are around, and not from a place of security, but like that insecurity and out of um like lack, that can be really hard to, like, we tend to want to latch on to anything, and it can be really, really hard. And I think, like, so just to, like, for those who are listening, I think there's a lot of different ways that we can feel loneliness, and I kind of touched on it in the beginning. And there's, general loneliness versus like severe depression, loneliness, like we are detached from people. And I think how this often presents is like, the deeper loneliness, the sense that you really do need to build more connection, or find a way to build connection, because it's not doing right. Being alone is not good for us. We're meant to be a social species, to have relationships and connections with people. And so different ways that loneliness can appear, where it might be like, hey, this is a signal you need to be trying to connect more with others, whether it's people you already know or new people you need to connect with. It could be things like, feeling as if no one understands you, feeling like you don't ever really belong, finding it hard to connect with others on a deeper level, feeling alone, even when you're in a big group of people, right? Like you were in a big group of people the other night, but you didn't feel alone. You didn't have that sense of loneliness. Sometimes this is a big one, because you are wanting so much connection. Sometimes we tend to overshare when someone listens to us, because like, finally a connection. Constantly apologizing and trying to please everyone. That's another sign that like you might be feeling some really deep loneliness, or like withdrawing when you're in a room full of people. And I get some of us are more introverted, and some of us like to be on the outskirts of a crowd, and that's different. But if you are like constantly withdrawing when around people, that might be a signal, hey, something's not right. And consistently, I know this is common with depression, like consistently declining social invites and social interaction. And although some of us tend to be more solitary, which again, there's nothing wrong with it, but if you're having all these other like thoughts and experiences, it's definitely a signal that the loneliness is more on that kind of depression side, that you might be struggling. And it's really important that you are aware of that, so that you can maybe make some changes for yourself and figure out how you can reach out better to people, or, change what it is that you are feeling. I don't know if that made sense, but
I resonate with all of those things actually. At some point in my life, particularly in my 20s, I really had that feeling of I don't feel like I belong. No one really understands me, especially when you're starting a business and you're living an
oh yeah,
alternative lifestyle. Like I don't live a normal life, really. it's normal for me, but to other people it's wild. So like that feeling of like, oh, no one gets me, especially people that I've like had friendships with like for my whole life, and particularly like feeling alone when other people are around, and also withdrawing in a room full of people. I used to always say I absolutely hate group scenarios. Like I'd avoid group situations like the absolute plague. Like give me a group of like up to 5 people, I'm absolutely fine, but give me a group of more than that, I really struggle with it. And like I'll often like, when I was younger and I used to drink a lot, I remember I went to a party with my ex-boyfriend once, and it was all his work friends, like 50, 60 people there or something, didn't know anyone. I would just drink. I would just get wasted drunk because I was like so insecure in that situation. And I just felt so lonely. I'd like look around the room and be like, I know nobody here other than him. Like it just really like dawned on me like how alone I was in that situation. And I would just either drink to get out of it, or completely withdraw and be like, gotta go, can't be in this situation anymore. So yeah, I completely understand that, and I think a lot of people will resonate with those feelings. I think even if we don't admit it to ourselves sometimes, because we think, oh, you know, I've got loads of friends, like I've got my best friend from childhood. Like you might have people around you. I don't think everyone even realizes that maybe they are lonely. It's probably presented in other ways, maybe, rather than actually that feeling of, oh, I don't have people around me, I'm lonely kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think one of the big goals of while I was traveling was that I really wanted to make really solid girl friendships. That was like a huge, like when I left to travel, that was like, this is one of the things I want to accomplish through my traveling. I want to be able to go somewhere where I don't know anybody, and I want to make genuine relationships, specifically with women. It's fine with men, but it's a different level, especially as you get older, kind of thing. And I've done that. Every country that I've gone to, I've made genuine connections with groups of people, men and women. And then I always have at least 1 to 2 girls that I've like made really solid relationships with. But here I am in another new city. And here I think it's a bit more closed off. So I've had a really hard time. Also, coming then, and this is another thing. And I think for people, right? Having to put yourself out there takes a lot of energy.
Yeah.
If you're depressed, it's even harder, right? Like from starting base, it takes a lot of energy to put yourself out there. If you're starting from below here, you have even further to go to like really put yourself out, which is why, like, if you are struggling with depression and you're feeling incredibly lonely, the first place to start would be to the people that are already in your community, in your circle, and just trying to connect with them. And for me, right, I got here right when I got here, my mom passed. And I tried putting myself out there to meet people, but I just did not have the emotional capacity to do so. I met some nice people, but it's not turned in anything, long standing. And then I'm very grateful that my friend, that Gabby came, and she's been here with me and Sean, and she's also someone from my travel lifestyle, and she's also running her own business. And so like we can relate on a lot of those things. And so I haven't really had the need to like put myself out there a whole lot. We have gone out to like meet people and things, but life has been a little bit hard in the last, several months since I moved back. And there's going to come a point where I really have to have that energy, that capacity to put myself out there to make friends. And I think like, because we were talking earlier, you said, where you're at now, they don't have the same sort of like WhatsApp groups, Facebook groups that you typically find in other places. I mean, that's how you and I met. We met, was it Facebook or was it, I think it was Facebook, not WhatsApp. Yeah. We met on Facebook, and then we like hung out in Bali together a bunch, and then we've stayed in touch ever since. And now we're running a business together. But like, I think here in the US, it's very similar. And I know like where you're at in Costa Rica, it's very, US influence. Like it's definitely been taken over. And yeah, it's hard. I mean, I've joined some groups and things. I've tried to get together with like a couple of people, but people bail last minute. They're all like, oh, sorry, I can't. We made plans, we decide a place, a date, and a time, and then they bail. And it's like, I people have social anxiety and things like that, but making friends as adults outside of your already existing community is hard.
It is hard. I think I definitely can see that it's hard. I think I've been quite lucky in the sense of I've always been in situations where I have been able to not need to put myself out there too much to make friends, mainly through travel, through co-working spaces, through the activities that I do. But that's me exerting energy into activities, and then as a result of that, then I get the friendship. So just to give some examples, like when I lived in London all through the pandemic, obviously we were very isolated. Like particularly in London, we were in lockdown for months and months and months on end. Like I think in total we spent about a year in actual lockdown, weren't allowed to leave our house kind of thing. So like obviously at the end of that I was really craving connection, and at the same time I'd started this business in lockdown, and I really just wanted to, nobody I knew had done what I was doing, and it was like I just felt really alone. Like whenever I was trying to talk to somebody about it, nobody really understood what I needed or like what I was trying to do, and everyone was like, well, why don't you, if it's so hard, why don't you go back to full-time employment? And I was like, absolutely not, like that's the worst thing that could possibly happen to me. And the way that I then solved that was by going to co-working spaces, and conveniently my co-working space at the time had a bouldering gym attached to it, a bouldering and yoga gym. And I'm not shy, but I do find it really hard to initiate conversations with strangers sometimes. I have to psych myself up, think about what I'm going to say, and like I don't feel it when the conversation's in flow. Like if someone speaks to me, I'll happily talk back. But like for me to initiate the conversation, I find that very hard. And I remember there was this girl, and we'd been both of us had been working at this co-working space for like 2 months at this point. We see each other every single day. We pass each other. We see each other in the gym. Like we might as well be friends at this point because we've seen each other so much, but no one's ever made the first move to talk to each other. And I remember she was showing someone her new bouldering shoes, and I just went over and I was like, where did you buy those? Like the one thing that I know that I can have a conversation about is like clothes and shoes and stuff, because obviously that was my background. So we then got into a conversation, and then actually now she's like one of my best friends. She actually moved to Bali like around the same time as I did, and we became very close. Okay. And so we're still really good friends. And I think finding friendships through either activities that you like is way easier, because you know that you've got something in common. If you have got a business, or you're going out to co-working spaces, things like that, again, you've got business in common with somebody, so you're more likely to meet somebody that's a bit more like-minded. And also through the gym, I've always made friends through the gym, like particularly because I personally really enjoy classes. If you go to the same gym class like every week, you're going to see the same people. And again, I randomly did this again in lockdown. When you're the place you're at the time, you're not meant to be making new friends. Here I was just sort of making all these new friends.
Hey, what's up?
I went to this new gym class that was run by like a girl that I knew in the park, because obviously we weren't allowed, the gyms weren't open, so she was doing it in the park. So we went to the park, and then at the end of the class, this other girl was there, and then we were both walking in the same direction. So I just like struck up the conversation, was like, oh hey, how did you find the class? And then at the time I didn't really know that many people, same as you. I just moved to a new area of London. I didn't really know that many people in this area, so I was actively trying to put energy into making friends. But obviously 6 months after I'd moved there, we'd gone into lockdown, so I hadn't really had that opportunity. So I met this girl at this gym class in the park, and then we walked out the park together, and by the end of the park I had her number. We met up again a few weeks later and things like that. So I think it really does require energy. I definitely agree with that. But I think it's all about the situations you put yourself in, and try to put yourself in situations that you know you're going to enjoy anyway. Then it does then require a bit of like Dutch courage, confidence to be like, hello, will you be my friend?
Will you be my friend? And like all the things, so like I've done all the things that you said in the past, but here in the US, shit is expensive. I would love to be part of a co-working space, but everywhere I go, it's over $500 a month. That is insane. Like, and that's not for your own personal desk. That is for an open space that you get maybe access to phone booths or kind of thing. And like, as much as I would love to do that to meet people, it's just not an expense that I feel like I can, like, especially if I'm trying to also have a gym membership. And then like Gabby and I did go for a while to a bouldering gym that had sort of a co-working space, and She went a lot more than me. It was like a little more like dark. It wasn't like a lot of light in there. So I personally didn't enjoy working there as much. But it was nice to have access to like this. I slackline quite a bit. So like to slackline and do a little bit of climbing. But if you climb too much, then you can't like type because your hands are.
Literally, I had the same problem.
Yeah. So like I get it that like there's definitely opportunities. And so I've had to lean into like finding Facebook groups. And there's these really cool things that are happening now that are called, oh crap, what are they called? It's like cut the small talk meetups kind of thing. And I
Yeah,
think they're popping up around a lot of places in the world where it's like, okay, we're not here to like say, how's the weather? How are you? Where are you from? But more so like cut the small talk and like, let's build relationships. But it takes a lot of confidence to get out of your comfort zone, to go to that by yourself, to do those things. But I do think right now with the way that the world is and how connected we are with the internet and social media and all of those things, I think people are feeling a lot more like lonely than they've ever felt. They're
yeah,
feeling lonelier than they've ever felt. Um, and so yeah, and I think I think we've seen the effects of what happened with COVID, with everybody being so isolated. And a lot of people didn't know how to sit with themselves, or then they were trapped in situations with unhealthy family relationships. And now I think it's becoming more apparent that having the right people around you is important for your mental health, and that you do have to actually actively find your tribe, so to speak. I
yeah.
mean,
For sure. It's super important. I mean, solitude is really important as well. And like being able to spend time on yourself. Like I always remember this one girl that I interacted with as a teenager. And like even I knew her throughout my teenage years for a friend of a friend. And then as we got older, we kind of knew each other in our early 20s. Don't really speak anymore. But I always remember she told me she would never go to the supermarket on her own. Like she just couldn't go to the supermarket on her own. Like it was like her biggest fear to be alone in the supermarket. And that's always stuck with me and been like, wow, you really struggle to spend time by yourself. Which I think is a really dangerous position to be in, because ultimately we never know what's going to happen externally to us with the relationships that we're in. Things change very quickly. We need to be okay with ourselves if anything does change. But equally, obviously, connection is very important, and to be able to do things and share experiences with people is also very important. Just before we move on to the subject of solitude, I just want to go back to one other way to make friends as an adult that my sister tried. Actually, my sister moved to a brand new area as well, and didn't have any friends within the vicinity. She was living with her boyfriend, so yes, she had people, but actually, two ways she did it. One was she put herself out there on Bumble BFF. So Bumble is a dating app.
I did that.
Bumble is,
Yeah.
doesn't know, but it does have a BFF function. So if you want to make friends with people of the same sex as you or opposite sex as you, but in the same vicinity as you, that's a really good way to connect without actually having to put too much effort in, because it's just like swiping as you would on a dating app. And then the other thing that she did was go to the local pub quiz. So she had a pub at the end of her road. She went to the pub quiz. Obviously, people need to merge and make friends, and then she's made like friends that all live down the same road as her, basically. So, but I think again, it just depends on how much effort and you have available to you to make, basically. But as I said, solitude is also very important. It's really important to be able to learn to be by yourself. Personally, I think I'm quite good at solitude, but I think you have to be as a solo traveler. And I don't know, what's been your experience with solitude?
Yeah, gosh. I mean, so technically, like I'm an only child, right? And so for the first, I think like 6 years of my life, I was truly an only child. And then other kids came into my life and I was raised with them. And so I always like to tell people I'm an only child, but I'm socialized. But I think as a kid, I learned how, like, because for those first few years, I learned how to like entertain myself and just do things for myself. Granted, I don't remember that period of time at all. My memory is quite shit for previous years of my life. There's chunks of time I don't remember, but I think with traveling, I'm okay to sit on my own and like do my own thing. But in new circumstances, sometimes it's hard to like for me to like go out in a new area and walk around by myself. That's sometimes a little anxiety provoking. If I have a goal, like, oh, I'm going grocery shopping, that's that's not a problem. But it's like, just kind of like checking things out. Like with traveling, I've done a lot of stuff on my own, but I do know I prefer to be with a friend or a partner. I like having that shared experience. Um, and then I found people like in who are going to do a tour, and I'm like, can I join you even if I don't know them? And that's nice enough. But I would definitely say via traveling, having to learn how to sit and have a meal by yourself. If you really want to go see the thing and there's no one around to see the thing with you, you have to go on your own. And as uncomfortable and hard as it was, I enjoyed it. I'm a very extroverted person. I've always been quite extroverted. And I would say over the last several years, I've kind of slid backwards where I'm like, yes, I'm an extroverted person, but I've come to find how important my introverted alone time is. Like to be able to sit and read a book, or to sit and just do breathing and yoga, or watch TV on my own, or go out and like check out some sort of activity in the community, or go for a walk. And I've never gone to a movie by myself. My boyfriend likes to do that. That's something he likes to go on his own, and like have that alone time. And so I can see where like the benefits of that is. And I just think it's, in all honesty, I think everyone could benefit from learning how to sit quietly with their own thoughts and feelings. I'm not saying you have to put yourself out in like big group experiences and be alone, but I think it's important that you learn how to do that. And then, you know, recognize in those moments when you need to do it on your own versus like, can you actually put yourself out there and reach out and meet people? I think it's a balance, right? Like, when is solitude important, and like how are you comfortable doing that, getting yourself out of your comfort zone to learn how to do that, and then recognizing like, are you actually withdrawing, or are you too shut down and there's an issue there and we need more connection. And I think it's really about understanding what works best for you, but having some level of both is important.
I agree. I think there's a time and a place for solitude. There's a time and place to be on your own, but then outside of that, I think community and having the people, even if you're not with them, you don't need to be with them every second of every day, but like being able to tap into a community as and when you need it is really important. Like for me, I really relate to what you said there about when you're in a new place, going out for the first time and trying to be by yourself. Like I find that's, even me as someone that travels constantly, I'm constantly changing my environment, I'm constantly rocking up to new places. To get me out of the house that first time to go somewhere, I do get
Hard.
anxiety. And I don't know, I still haven't quite figured out why, but I have kind of half put it down to, I was thinking about this the other day, the fact that I did used to struggle really badly with my self-worth. And for example, maybe like before, when I would have gone into like a new restaurant to sit by myself, I maybe didn't feel like I was warranted to take up that space by myself and have those conversations with waiter on my own and things like that. So that's one thing I can maybe put it down to. But I do, like, especially gyms. I love the gym. I'm a seasoned gym goer. I know what I'm doing in the gym. I know how to practice different sports. But going into a new gym for the first time, I find that so anxiety inducing for no reason other than that I
Yeah.
don't want to be judged for like anything that I'm doing, even though I know that I'm actually quite well versed in what I'm doing in the gym. But like, I just find that so hard. And like, I don't want to sit there and look at my phone and get lost and panicked. And do you know, like, it's just like such an overwhelming feeling. The only place that I don't
Yeah.
feel that one, and this is specifically why I choose this style of town to normally live in. I normally choose to live in surf, yoga, beach towns, because I know that those towns offer me a variety of things that I like doing, particularly the beach, because I know that if there's one place that I feel safe, it's at the beach. So if I need to go for a walk and be by myself, going to the beach for me is like the perfect place.
Yeah.
But obviously not everyone has access to being in the right environment for them. So it's about finding a safe space for you, I think, like whether that's the supermarket. Like also, whenever I'm in a new place, the first thing I do is go to the shopping mall. Because that is my background. My background was in buying, my background's in fashion. I love clothes. Like I don't need to buy anything, but it's the one place that you can guarantee everywhere you go in the world is a familiar environment. Everywhere pretty much has Zara, Mango, H&M, you know, like, so you go to the shopping street or the shopping mall. For me, that's my safe space. So as soon as I land in a new country, I know that I'm going to feel okay there. So there on the beach of like, I've found all my safe havens. Anywhere outside of that is still a bit anxiety induced. I have to work my way up. But if you start in your safe haven, it's going to feel way more comfortable when you do get to a new environment to navigate those new places.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. As you were talking, I'm trying to think about like, do I have a safe haven? Like when I go to a new place and I'm there for a minute, what are the first few places that I check out? For me, I think it's four things. It's the grocery store. Like, where am I getting my food? Like, it's the basics. Where am I
Priorities.
getting my food? um, it's a coffee shop. Typically, like, where can I get good coffee and where can I get coffee slash can I work outside of the house? I think that's usually a big one for me. Usually it's finding, this one's hard sometimes, it's finding food. I became gluten and dairy intolerant like 4 years ago after living in Asia. And so sometimes I get anxiety about going out to restaurants now because it's like, crap, like, am I going to be able to eat the things that I like and to not get sick? Um, and ironically, like street food is usually very, very feasible for me. And so I can eat that and I love it. But like it's the food. And then the last thing, the thing that makes me really comfortable after being in a new place is going out at night to a bar or something. It's not necessarily that I have to go drinking, like I don't have to be drinking or anything, but it's that I'm in the nightlife, the night scene, because it's very different from daytime, right? Like, and I think with night comes danger, right? Like being out on the streets after, late, blah, 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 and seeing how I can navigate my space in a different, view of the city or wherever it is that I'm living. Those, like, if I feel comfortable going out at night and I can do something like that, plus having my staple for grocery and coffee and maybe like a solid like restaurant that I like to eat at, that's what makes me feel really comfortable. And I think that's like here in Chicago. I mean, that's what we did. We like walked to the first night that we went out, we went to a craft tequila bar, which is like right down the road from us. But prior to that, we found our coffee shop, which is this like great Colombian coffee that's in the metro station right here, right by our house, and figuring out our grocery store. And I live in a very Hispanic area in Chicago. And so they've got like taco stands everywhere. So within the first few weeks, we figured out which taco stands were the best prices, and like the combination of the two. And that made me feel, and then walking around in the neighborhood, I would say that walking places is really, really helpful. But it's always really hard for me to go out and walk alone and to be out just walking alone on my own. So it was helpful to like, I would make Sean do it. Sean walks a lot in his job. He's an electrician, so he's moving all the time. And at the end of this day, he's not really wanting to do it. But I'd be like, can you come for a walk? Now I go out on my own. It's no problem. But yeah, so it's funny to think about that, the staples that like you need or that like are your safe haven, and kind of getting yourself to do those things first.
I think it's important, especially if you're someone that is struggling with anxiety, to find things that are familiar to you. Like even if it's so different, like if let's say you're going on holiday somewhere new and you've never been there before, like it's going to be overwhelming. But I think if you can find something that you know is a place that you feel comfortable, then that's going to be a real game changer for you, I think, in feeling more confident to go and explore other areas.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a difficult one. Like you say, there's a balance between solitude and needing the connection as well, and like going and experiencing things. I also prefer to experience things with other people. I very much like there's certain things I love to do by myself, like beach walk with podcasting, love it. Going shopping, love being on my own. Actually hate shopping with other people, it's so annoying. But like, there's other, like if I'm going out on a day trip, I would way prefer to be surrounded by people that I care about. If I'm going to go and sit on the beach for a few hours at a time, I would way prefer to do that in company and just sit and chill with somebody. If I'm going to a coffee shop, restaurant, I'd love to have dinner with someone. But sometimes
Yeah.
you also need to feel comfortable being able to do those things by yourself. And I think if you can feel comfortable doing those things by yourself, then it's really empowering actually, for you to take other areas. It's like you taking control of areas of your life, isn't it?
No, absolutely. It's very, very much so like that. And I think the really key point to remember here is like outside of solitude, right? Loneliness, the cure for loneliness isn't necessarily more interaction, but it's meaningful interaction, right? Because the opposite of feeling lonely is being understood. And so it's not like you just want to fill that space with going to the beach with just random people. I mean, like sometimes you got to do it. You got to meet random people in order to build those relationships in the first place. But the idea is if you enjoy being on your own, like you have to learn, like, can I do this on my own? Yes. Do I enjoy doing it alone, or do I prefer it with people? And if you prefer it with people, like finding people that you can have meaningful interactions with to share that experience with. And I think, yeah, everything you just said was just very spot on. And it really is understanding the difference between, do I need to learn how to have my own time, and what do I like doing on my own, and how can I manage when I am on my own because other people can't be with me. And then if you are really feeling lonely, it's about finding that meaningful interaction and having to put a little time and energy into that, which again always brings me back to, right, I'm terrified of the day that Gabby's going to leave. Well, actually, she just left today to go on a trip. She's gone for a week, which is like not a big deal. That's totally fine. But when she's gone and it's just me, like I work at home and like I interact, I'm on calls all the time. So I'm interacting with people, but like in my space, in my environment, I know that it'll feel lonely. I was a bit lonely before she came, and I've got Sean when he comes home from work, and that's great. That's wonderful. But like, I have to think about, how am I going to put myself out there? And I have to remember, a starting point is if I'm feeling truly, truly lonely and alone, I'm going to start calling the people that I already know. I'm going to start making an effort to call my best friend in Australia. I'm going to start making an effort to call my best friend who's in Vietnam. Like I'm going to try to have more meaningful conversations and interactions to at least fill that spot until I can find a community here, because that's like a stepping stone, right? So I don't know. I kind of went down a rabbit hole of whatever there, but
I think just one more thing before we close. Obviously, when you are struggling with mental health as well, it's one of the times where you probably feel the loneliest, and it's often a time where you feel like people don't understand what you're going through, or nobody else is experiencing the same situation as you if you're going through like a really difficult period. I know that I can definitely relate to that, of like feelings like, oh God, I'm really spiraling with my anxiety, no one's going to understand. But then I talk to somebody and they're like, oh yeah, me too, and I'm like, oh great, I feel better now.
Mhm.
So one of the things obviously that we are trying to do with TINAH is build this into a community where it's a safe space for you to talk about and meet other people that are actually in the same situations as you. So we do have a Facebook group that we're open up
Yeah.
to anyone that wants to join our TINAH community, to feel like they have a safe space to meet other people that are in a very similar position to how they're feeling, and feel like you've got a safe space to share your opinions, your thoughts, your feelings, everything that's going on. We are doing this business, we've built this business because we want to destigmatize conversations and empower people to take their mental well-being into their own hands. And it can be a really daunting process when we first start. Both of us have gone on our own mental health journeys, and we understand that it's a really scary prospect to put yourself out there and connect with other people. But it definitely, as we say, like finding your tribe of people and people that understand that you're going through is really important, and it can really help you improve your mental health.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a huge part, a component, is we want to be able to provide a space for people to connect. Just know it's not a replacement for, like, therapists or psychiatrists or things like that. And if people are willing to support, there can be peer support there. And it doesn't necessarily also have to be, this is one thing I want to say, like if you are experiencing extensive depression, anxiety, amongst other mental health issues, and you're feeling lonely, I know it can be really hard to put yourself out there. And then, even for the people, if you're trying to connect with the people who you already have a community with, like your close friends and family, I know there's always that sentiment that I'm a burden. No one like understands, but also it's too much for other people to deal with. Sometimes that when you're trying to have a meaningful interaction, you can just, I think the key words to learn to say here is that if you're, reaching out to a friend you haven't spoken to in a while and you're feeling depressed or anxious, is saying, hey, I'm having a hard time right now. There's not anything that I need you to do. I just want to catch up and I want to talk about life and other things. Like the connection, the interaction doesn't have to be focused on them taking care of you or them supporting you. And this is also just a friendly reminder that you are worthy of their time and attention, right? You are worthy of having meaningful interactions. You are worthy of those things. And so just know, like, I know it might not feel that way in the moment, but There are people out there who are experiencing the same things, and maybe they don't want to talk about their shit either, but they most likely, I can say probably like 95% of people want to connect. They can want to connect regardless. And so, yeah, just know you're not alone. Know that you are worthy of having a meaningful interaction, and that if you can, try to take some baby steps to get yourself out there to connect with people you're already connected with, or if you have the energy, put yourself out there to connect with people you don't know yet, because there's a lot of us out there that we're trying to build more meaningful relationships.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, guys, thanks for listening to our podcast today. If this resonated with you, be sure to give us a like, and we would love to hear your feedback in the comments about what topics you'd like to hear more about. Don't forget to subscribe, follow us on socials, and join the community at timeisnotahealer.com. All the details can be found in the episode description below. And remember, you hold the power to heal. Until next time, you've got this.